Okay, so we're going to change the fuel filter first, and it's a very simple situation. You just squeeze these clamps and slide them back like that, and then we're going to twist the filter out of the hose. Plenty of fluid coming in there. Now let's see which direction, where's the arrow on this thing? It certainly wouldn't seem like it was a problem there. There's fuel coming in from the fuel tank for sure. Put the clamp on there. Put the clamp on there. Now, let's take a look. Pretty dirty on the outside, that's to be expected. I don't see a whole lot of dirt on the inside, so let's do the old blow test and wipe this off a little bit, and I'll blow through it. That certainly didn't seem to be the problem. There's no restriction in the fuel filter, so we know that there's got to be a problem somewhere else. And we saw that we had good fuel flow coming into the filter. So the next step now is going to be investigate our fuel pump. All right, hold on to your hats. I think I'm going to remove the hood because it's a whole lot easier to get at it with the hood out of the way. And all you have to do to get the hood off on this is to reach down in here and disconnect the wires for the headlight. Once you get your headlight wires unhooked, then you just grab a hold of the hood, and let me see if I grab it right here. I should be able to lift it right out of place. There we go, just like that. So now I have full access to the front of the motor. And really good access to the fuel pump. Well, let me drop you down in closer here. I'm going to take you in closer this way. Now you can see better from this angle. You can see that tube. I talked about the pulse tube coming up out of the valve cover. This one right here. And I don't see any cracks in it. And it's hooked in well. So what we're going to do now, we're going to disconnect the fuel pump of the fuel line on this side. Pull it off like that. There's fuel coming out of it, just dribbling out. And I have to sit on the seat for it to crank over. Because I got to push down on the clutch, and I have to sit down on the seat so that the seat doesn't change. Now I can't see the front of the fuel pump. So it's started, and we can see the fuel pump is pumping pretty good there. Let's hook that back up. I'm satisfied that the fuel pump is working. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to try starting it again. Getting it to start, but you heard it keeps dying. Now let me show you what's happening here. I'm going to back you up so you're not just looking at the fuel pump, but so you can see my throttle lever at the same time. You're going to find that what happens if I hold the choke forward, once I get it started, it'll stay running. Start again. Till my battery dies. Now we'll have to get the battery charger up. You'll have to take my word for it. We saw it was getting good fuel pressure out of the fuel pump, and so we're going to investigate a little bit further. I'm going to take the cover off the air cleaner, and I think on this one we may end up having to remove this whole top shroud to get down into the carburetor itself. Now we can see where the fuel line goes into the carburetor, but we can't get at the carburetor itself because it's buried underneath all that plastic. So let's see, I see a couple of screws here. Maybe I could take these screws out and this section will lift out of there. Hold on to your hats, and we'll do that. I actually have had this apart before, but it was a year ago, and my memory isn't what it used to be back in the old days. I'm not as young as I used to be, don't you know? No, that doesn't just lift out of there. We're going to have to take the whole cover off. So that means I got to take these things off of the fan cover, and then we'll lift the shroud off and we'll get down in there. I've got these bolts loosened up already, going around the side, and I don't have to take them off all the way, I don't think. I just got to loosen them up enough to lift it off. Take that off like that. Oh, I missed one right here. Right in the front by the fuel pump, and you know what? I think maybe I'm going to have to take the fuel pump off anyway, because it bolts through this cover. There we go. Now maybe, if I've got these bolts all loosened up enough, I should be able to lift this right off of here. The holes are slotted, they're not just a hole through. There. Now we can see down into the carburetor. And you can see that it has kind of a funky setup. Those are the intake manifold, those plastic tubes mounted to the front of the carburetor. And our fuel line goes right in the top. I'm thinking maybe we'll take this plate off and see what we can see in there. Before I do that, I'm going to squirt it with the carburetor cleaner. Just get rid of the gobbledygook. I'll take a look and see what's inside here. Come on now. Might have to use a straight slot on that last one. They are combination Phillips and straight slot. Carefully peel this off because I don't want to mess with it. A lot of gunk in there, but that doesn't really help me. That doesn't get down into the carburetor itself. Some external dirt here. Okay, that didn't help me any. So we're gonna just wipe that off and put that plate back on there. So my next thing to do is probably I'm gonna see if I can get down in underneath and see if I can get at the float bowl. I really don't want to have to pull the whole carburetor off if that's not necessary. So hold on to your hats and I'll get this put back together and then I'll bring you back and we'll go underneath. Okay, we have our battery charger hooked up and so now we're going to go down here. If I get down here with you. And I already checked to see if it was this solenoid. They can stick sometimes, but that didn't make any difference. So we have a screw there and another screw there. And I can't hold the camera and do that at the same time, but I'm going to take the float bowl off and we'll take a look inside together and see what we see. Okay, so I couldn't get the screws out of the float bowl. So what I have done instead is I have taken the solenoid out that goes in the bottom of the float bowl, and I caught the gas that came out of it in this little cup. Oh, and the cup got rotted through by the gas. But what you can, you still can't see it. There was water in the bottom there. And so I'm going to have to put some dry gas into my gas tank. And I'm just going to squirt up in there with some carburetor cleaner, brake cleaner, and flush that out as best I can. And we'll put it back together and see what happens. I think the water is the problem. And like I said, I had mowed my whole front lawn. I mowed my whole lawn once with this and had no problems. So it might be just from sitting outside, I don't know. So let me put the solenoid back in. Well, I gotta flush it out, but then we'll put the solenoid back in. The other thing is this plunger was sticking on it. And for those who remember when I first got this, this had been flooded and that solenoid was sticking then. So we'll flush this out real good, put the solenoid back in, and we'll give it another try. Okay, so we're going to put some dry gas in the gas tank to help disperse any water that might be. I just filled the tank the other day, and if you go into a parts store, I know it's old guys know what dry gas is, but I went into a parts store the other day to get some dry gas, and I asked the guy, do you have any dry gas? He said, no, we don't have it. What's that? And I said, well, it's for dispersing water in your fuel. He says, oh, we have heat. Well, I said, heat is a brand name. So we got it, and we're putting it in. And I'm putting the whole thing in. This is about a 10-gallon tank, I believe. So we'll see what happens. That will mix in with the gas and whatever, come on now, whatever what's the problem here? Okay. Whatever water there is in there, it'll break it up and suspend it in the gasoline, don't you know? So let me clear the rest of the junk off of here. We won't put the hood on yet, but I have the engine all back together. We won't expect it to fire right off because we drained the float bowl. Remember when I took the solenoid out? I have charged the battery up. So we'll see what we shall see. Hold on to your hats, because here we go. Buzzing on it. starter not disengaging. My solenoid is stuck, I guess. Yep, that's what it is. And that was a new solenoid last year. I'll tell you what, taking that off there. Ouch! That bolt got hot. Well, there's no rest for the weary. You saw me riding my mower, and it's working fine. It's a little bit, still a little bit rough, and I think it's because of it's still got a little bit of water in it, and until that works out, it's not going to smooth out real well. But it does the job, and it mows. That's what we need it for. This mower here is one that was left on the property when we bought the place, and I fixed it and I used it for mowing, and I think I have a couple of videos on replacing the belt. Well, the belt's gone out on it again, but the problem was the CVT pulley. I had to take that off and free it up. It was stuck. And this one is going to go to my grandchildren when I'm all done fixing it. This one here is my other Husqvarna, and the only reason it's up here is it's got a flat tire on the back. So I'll be having to fix that tomorrow. So we're caught up for the moment. I did want to say that by the time you see this video, the procedure will already be done. Kevin is in, he went in at 3 o'clock this afternoon to have a procedure done. He came out of the hospital about a week ago. He was home for 2 days, and then he started bleeding really bad. And so he got rushed down to the hospital. And today they were going in and going to be doing cauterization in his bladder because he's been bleeding pretty much all week. He had a respite yesterday for most of the day while my wife and I were down there visiting, but it started up again this morning. So he's still got a long way to go on his recovery. He was up and walking around, and we went out to eat together before he started having this issue. So we're hoping he'll be home again tomorrow, and but we appreciate your prayers for him. He's got a long road to hoe at getting his strength back. He can walk and he can use his hands, but his pinky fingers don't function very well. He can wiggle them, but he can't grab anything with them. And that's part of the process of recovery. So if you think of Kevin, the big dog, send up a prayer for him. So until next time, this is George, the Shade Tree Fix-It Man. And thanks for watching, commenting, and subscribing. Kevin wanted to know why I wasn't mowing the grass on this banking. And I said, well, because that's not just grass there. In a little bit, it's going to be all in blossom with tiger lilies or daylilies or whatever you want to call them things. And so they have been for the last week, and I expect they will be for another week or so. They add a little bit of color to our yard, don't you know? Thanks for watching, commenting, and subscribing. And a quick update on the chickens. We took our last 3 hatchlings out, and they are now out in our secondary pen. And we moved the larger ones out of the secondary pen into the large pen, and we moved 3 of the roosters out so that they're out free ranging with Colonel Buffington. So from me to you, here in Shady Acres, thanks again for watching. Bye now.